Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe Illustrated. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this is the podcast Joe on Joe, where we go through every issue of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, the comic book in sequential order, page by page, panel by panel. We break it down with excruciating minutia, and I'm happy to be back this week for an action-packed, Shirley's happy to be back as well, with an action-packed issue, G.I. Joe number 70, with that great cover of a 45 press to the temple of Wild Bill. It's Wild Bill doesn't get enough love, and this is a good issue for him, everyone. I'm really excited. I hope you guys enjoyed last issue. We went over issue number 69. Another action pack. I mean, this is a good run of G.I. Joe. I enjoy it quite a bit. You guys, I've said this before. I love Ron Wagner on the book. I'm excited to get into it. While you guys are listening to the show, as long as you're on the internet and you got your phones in your hand, why don't you go to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, follow me at Joe on Joe Pod, or send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Tell me what you think of the show. Do you like it? Do you love it? Is it your new favorite thing? Is it the worst thing you've ever heard in your life and you never want to hear me again, but you've subscribed and you don't understand how to hit the unsubscribe button, so you want my help in unsubscribing? Email me. I will tell you how to unsubscribe, and it'll start with giving me a 5-star review. Then you can unsubscribe. Give me a review on wherever you get your pod. If it's on Apple, iTunes, or Stitcher, etc., so on and so forth. Reviews help because it shows the show to more people, and that's always a very, very good thing. We do have a sponsor for the show, and they are called Movies in a Meal Podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts, and you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie, it's about not 2 movies, it's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal Podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Speaking of movies, I finally saw Tenet, and I look forward to seeing it for the first time at some point in the future. That's all I'm going to say about Tenet, because that's all I can say about Tenet. That movie was out there. So now we have a segment on this show that I love to start with, where I check out all the comic books and all the mainstream comic books, the Marvel and the DC books that were on the shelf the same cover month as G.I. Joe. In this case, it was cover dated April of 1988, and we call this segment
You Were Saying.
And we're going to start over at Marvel Comics. Amazing Spider-Man 299. So now this is your second Todd McFarlane issue, where Spider fans, if they hadn't already been seeing his work on the Hulk book, Spider fans got their first taste of Todd McFarlane, and they were going gaga for it. He really invigorated that book and the look of that book. And frankly, that book had a really great run. My favorite run of Spider-Man is in the 200s from it's that David Michel, was it? Well, it was like the John Romita stuff, but it was Roger Stern. Sorry, it was the Roger Stern era from like that 220-ish era all the way up through the black costume stuff, and then now you're reinvigorating with the Todd McFarlane stuff. It's really, really amazing work. Daredevil 253 is a fantastic cover by John Romita Jr., Kingpin holding Daredevil's wilted mask, which is always fabulous when you give something to the reader on the cover that could be a mystery, but it reveals something. In this case, could it be he's screwing around with Daredevil's alter ego? Could it be, he's got Daredevil dead? Stuff like that. I love covers that do that. I'm a big fan of it. Excalibur Special Edition #1. I talked a bit about Excalibur last week. This is the first appearance of Excalibur. This was a bookshelf format book. At the time, I think they were still calling it Dark Knight format, where it was the special, it was the coming together of the team. And it was dealing with, Nightcrawler was recovering from his injuries, and Kitty was still immaterial. Her phasing had yet to turn off. And Rachel had been out of the X books for like 20 some issues or something like that. And so she met up with them, and then they were recuperating at Muir Island. So they were hanging out in England and so on and so forth. And it brought a lot of the ideas that Alan Davis was working on when he was working on just the Captain Britain strip, like the stuff that was being published by Marvel UK. So a lot of this was an introduction to the American audience. So the Excalibur Special Edition #1, a lot of people don't realize that's the first appearance of Excalibur, not Excalibur #1. What else do we got here? We got Shirley down the hallway barking. Sorry for that. Hold on one second. Oh, no, here it is. Iron Man Crash. Yeah, this is an Iron Man graphic novel. Computer generated, if memory serves. I'm trying to think if I've read this. Those early computer generated, this one, and then there was a Batman one called Digital Justice. They were very cool for the time. And in retrospect, they don't hold up visually, but if you this, and I reread Digital Justice recently, if you kind of go for the storytelling of it, they absolutely hold up. Like, they're still good stories, and they're still the same kind of flow, but the artwork, obviously, it's like watching early CGI. But they have special places in your heart, like, and in the history of digital comics, because comics were still they were not being colored digitally. They certainly weren't being drawn digitally, but they definitely weren't being colored digitally yet, although that is just around the corner. What else we got? Oh, The Pit. The Pit #1. This is a special one-shot that was in the New Universe, right? So the New Universe was books like, what are we talking about? Starbrand, Justice. Some of these books are in here too. Coming out this month. Starbrand, Justice. What was the other one? Kickers. I think Kickers Incorporated was the New Universe. DP7 was part of the New Universe. And that was the Marvel. They were trying to capitalize on their 25th anniversary, and it was literally set in a new universe. And what happened in The Pit was the city of Pittsburgh was actually destroyed. It's a really good comic book. They destroy the city of Pittsburgh. Starbrand who had been having trouble with his powers. If you're not familiar with Starbrand, basically it's kind of like a Green Lantern power, picture that, but it's a tattoo, right? So he learns that the tattoo itself, he can transfer it. So it's let's say it's on the palm of his hand, he can move it to his shoulder, he can move it here. So he realizes he can move the Starbrand. They've been using the Starbrand in Marvel Comics for the last few years. So he gets the wise idea, and I believe, if memory serves, it was a dumbbell, like a weightlifting dumbbell. He tries to transfer it to an inanimate object, and that explodes and destroys the city of Pittsburgh. This is my recollection of The Pit. What they were doing with it was they were really trying to inject energy into the new universe. The sales were straggling, and they were trying to find something to revigorate. So they did like this big line-wide event, which in this case was The Pit, and it was the city of Pittsburgh becoming like a giant crater, literally The Pit. From that, then there was a follow-up, which we should see in a couple months, called The War, I believe, where it was humanity going, okay, enough of these superpowers, and we got to fight it. So it's a lot of the stuff that they do in, like Watchmen of humanity against superheroes and Squadron Supreme and stuff. they were doing it in the pages of the new universe here. So that's what The Pit was. The Pit was the story of the city of Pittsburgh being wiped off the planet. So listeners in the city of Pittsburgh, if you don't have a copy of The Pit, or Pit number, not The Pit. The Pit is the Image Comics, but Pit #1, or it says The Pit on the cover though. But if you don't have a copy of it and you live in Pittsburgh, I don't understand what's holding you back. You absolutely should do it. It's one of the reasons why my favorite Transformers movie is Dark of the Moon. Not Dark of the... No, is Dark of the Moon the Transformers one where they destroy Chicago? The one that destroys Chicago. That's my favorite, just because you get to see your hometown just to ribbons in a comic book setting. It's just always fun. X Factor 27. This is my first issue of X Factor, everybody. So, what is this? April of 88. So that would have been... Well, yeah, that would have been it. That would have been when I first got into the X-Men. I had been dancing around comic books. I had only collected, oh wow, this is a nice little moment. I'd only collected G.I. Joe for a couple years, and I had been eyeing all these X books and stuff. And I think I saw the excitement over this Fall of the Mutants thing, and so I picked up X Factor 27, which was Iceman and the rest of the gang hanging out, like making like a nice Christmas tree on. It might have been the, I believe it's actually the Empire State Building. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be the Empire State Building because the spire got knocked off by Apocalypse's ship in the previous issue. And yeah, this was one of my first. It was it's either this one or the next issue, but this was absolutely #1 or #2 because I picked them up. I think I might have picked them up the same week, and it was special. It was really a big deal because I sort of knew who these characters were, but I didn't really. I was familiar with him from the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon as the original X-Men, certainly not known as X-Factor then, but as the original X-Men. So I knew who Iceman was, and that was my entree. And I think that's probably why this cover spoke to me, because I knew who Iceman was. And then I had this, vague recollection of the guy with the I-beam, Cyclops, and all that stuff. I also had and actually I still do, it's sitting on my shelf over there, like the Marvel crossword puzzle. What is it? Marvel superheroes. It's like a big yellow fun and games book. It's crossword puzzles and mazes and things like that. And there were a bunch of X-Men stuff in there. Specifically, I remember seeing Wolverine in there and being actually frightened by him because I didn't understand I didn't realize he was a good guy. I didn't understand what was going on. But that would have been my intro to the X-Men. But yeah, X Factor 27, that's kind of a special book. So here we go, everybody. X Factor 27, big week.
You were saying?
Now we're looking at DC Comics. And let's go here. Second part of 10 Nights of the Beast over in Batman 418. We talked about that last month. Black Hawk #2. We talked about that last week as well. Checkmate #1. This is a series that doesn't get enough due. It's not as good as its sister series, Suicide Squad, I would say. However, it is really great political spy adventures around the world in the vein of James Bond, in the vein of Man from U.N.C.L.E. In the DC universe. Not a ton of superpowers. They had the organization was called Checkmate, and all the people who ran it were knights and rooks and queens and things like that. And the main like street agents were knights, and they would go around the world and solve problems, very much in the line. I feel like if you're into G.I. Joe, which if you're listening to this, you're either way into G.I. Joe or you're way into me. And I'm here for both of those answers. You would probably like Checkmate because G.I. Joe did get into that a lot, actually, in this issue we're going to talk about today. That backroom dealing, the political subterfuge, countries against countries, and making moves, literally making chess moves to try to take over nation states and things like that. That's what Checkmate was all about. Greg Rucka reinvented Checkmate a few years back, probably 10 years, more than 10 years ago now. And he did a really great job with it. That series was a lot of fun. And this is the original series, and issue #1 is on the shelf. Flash #11 with Wally West. Doom Patrol #7. Forever People with a very creepy cover of like black squid ink coming out of I forget what his name is. Forever People names escape me. I know one's Beautiful Dreamer, and that's about all I can remember. With a bunch of ink coming out of his face, that's awkward. Justice League #12. It's the Man versus Machine, which is a weird subplot from the early days of the Justice League that I would love to get one of those guys on board with to talk about, not like to answer for it in any weird way, because that's rude, but to basically, Maxwell Lord was being manipulated by a computer machine. And I did just reread these, and it still felt unsatisfying. I feel like they introduced this manipulation plot as a way, or like it wasn't maybe the original plot. Like maybe they were going to actually make Max a genuine bad guy, but people realized he was a great character, because he is a great character. And so then they tried to have him. He was being manipulated by it, or he was at one point replaced by a machine. There's a lot going on with this, and it's okay. It wasn't really. I literally just reread it. It wasn't very satisfying. I love the Justice League, so I say that with heavy heart. Green Lantern 223. This was the final issue of the Green Lantern Corps. The Corps was destroyed. It had been called Green Lantern Corps for like 22 or 23 issues now, and the central power battery, they had trapped. I think the reason for the like disillusion of the Corps was when they executed Sinestro, and he got trapped they used the power to do it, so that corrupted the main power battery, which then would come back years later, and they would use as the excuse to make Hal Jordan Parallax, etc., and so on. That's interesting. A beautiful, I think, Ken Steacy cover, Legion 45. It's a Lightning Lad story, so that's always fun. The Shadow #9. That's a good looking cover. What do we got here? Oh, Superman versus the Prankster, John Byrne era. I just finished the second hardcover collection of that. So good. Jim Starlin's The Weird #1. It's weird. It's one of those miniseries where you can tell that the author, and there's a lot of miniseries like this. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the author wanted to tell the story of the weird, not necessarily tell a weird Justice League story, and that's fine. That's cool, because he certainly gives a lot of characterization to the story of this alien, but it never really resonated to me as a Justice League story. It's more of a device to tell the story of this. To be honest, let's use the Starlin example. He introduced Thanos in Iron Man. Iron Man has no business, Thanos has no business being introduced in an issue of Iron Man. Iron Man was very earthbound at the time, industrialist. He was not a cosmic person at all. But Starlin wanted to do these space odysseys and use these space characters, which are great characters. So it's not a knock on that, but that's the book they were working on at the time. So I feel like he had this idea for this, the weird, which is like this alien sentience. I forget it. They brought it back a couple times, but then, hey, let's wrap a Justice League story around it. So, but appropriately though, it is called The Weird. It's not called Justice League's The Weird. It's just called The Weird. So I guess you can't really knock any of that. It's got some Who's Who in the Legion of Superheroes Volume 1. So the Legion at the time strong enough to get its own chapter in the Who's Who volume. So it's not even a Who's Who issue number 16. They've 4 issues or maybe more than that. They got their own complete run of Who's Who. That's how popular Legion was at the time, and that's how far it has fallen. The Legion is struggling these days, guys. I hope DC can figure it out. All right, that's it for
You were saying
on the comic books. We're going to quick check in and see what was in the theaters in April of 1988. Bright Lights, Big City, Michael J. Fox, Kiefer Sutherland, Phoebe Cates, Diane Weiss, Swoozie Kurtz. Stop it. Tracy Pollan, who would go on to be Mrs. Michael J. Fox, John Houseman, Charlie Schlatter. What? This was about like the yuppie, like that cocaine, a cocaine 80s party time. Stretch role for Michael J. Fox because he was the Mr. All-American good boy. So I think this was a strong move for him. He was really good in it. It's a long time since I've seen it. It's not as good as what's the one with Robert Downey Jr. and I Thought We Were Cool. That one's nuts. I think we talked about that one a little bit. 18 Again. That's right, with George Burns, Jonathan Prince, where George Burns, it's a body swap movie, and George Burns swaps bodies with like his grandson. Yeah, that's right. College student switching souls with his grandfather. Oh, the body swap movie. You know, yeah, I mean, okay, Wonder Woman 84, I'm looking at you. Above the Law. Come on, Steven Seagal. Terrible. That's all on, Above the Law in 18 again is on April 8th. Forgot about that. April 1st was Bright Lights, Big City. We also got on April 15th, we got Colors, which Dennis Hopper directed it. Oh, wow. Sean Penn and Robert Duvall played cops in L.A. A young Don Cheadle's in it. It's a good flick. Strong flick. That came out on the 15th. Same date. You know what? That's weird. Another cop movie came out. No, it's not a cop movie. It's called Plain Clothes. I don't know what it's about, but it looks terrible. Anyway, looks like Colors was the big movie of April 15th. A lot of movies came out that day. On the 22nd, we got Casual Sex, ? Leah Thompson, Victoria Jackson. Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Amazing. George Clooney. Let's see. On the 29th, it's kind of a weak month. I'll say this. The movie Sunset, though. Blake Edwards movie with Bruce Willis, James Garner. It's okay. Yeah, kind of a pretty weak April. I'll say that. April 1988. No one's rewriting the record book for you. So here we go.
Now, mass is ready.
G.I. Joe number 70. Destro, and more Destro. He is back in this book again because we are still in Sierra Gordo. Like I said, the cover is gorgeous. I like the use of the color flat, the red color flat on the gun to kind of make it pop on that page, especially because you have the red in the logo, the G.I. Joe logo. Then you've got Wild Bill wearing a red vest, and then you've got the red like shading, just a full-on red flat color on both the gun and the hand. I think it really works. It gives nice layers too, because if you're looking at the cover, it gives depth to the picture, because the jungle is not only a pastel green, but it's also streaked because it's through glass, so you actually get streaks of white, so it makes it even lighter. Then you've got Wild Bill colored traditional levels of coloring for a comic book. Then you get the flat red for the gun, so it really gives you three nice levels on this cover. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see that it's a more traditional, full, like, not photo cover, but cover of action that's happening in the book instead of just some characters standing behind a blank background. I think we had gotten that for the last few issues. Nice to see us rebound from that.
Yo, Joe!
Over the jungles of Sierra Gordo. Got that C-130 that was hit. Remember, they lost an engine. It is going down. Now, one thing we learned, though, recently is just losing one engine on these planes shouldn't take you down because, that just happened recently in the news. However, their engine's on fire and the fire is spreading. So that's absolutely, they're not going to make it very far. It's called Fair Trade, written by Larry Hama, script, Ron Wagner breakdowns, Randy Emberlin finishes, Bob Sharon coloring, Joe Rosen lettering, Bob Harris is the editor, Tom DeFalco, editor-in-chief. A nice vista. This is where I wish a splash page would be horizontal. Now, I'm glad they didn't do the gimmick of flipping the page, but that would have actually worked on this if you flipped it to go wide on this. Like, this would have made it a nice widescreen shot in a movie, because you see the smoke trail that cuts all the way back to the top of the mountains, all the way past the dialogue balloon saying that you're over the jungles of Sierra Gordo. And that smoke trail shows us the path that this plane took as it got closer to the jungle canopy. Layers on layers on layers of jungle behind it, and the plane coming at the camera. It's a very simple image, but there's little things in here that really make it pop and make it work. Those are the things that, for me, that make it work. The smoke, the layers in the jungle, and then you get the forefront undisturbed foliage that's about to be disturbed. It's a nice subtle picture. It's actually there's a lot in this issue that's going to go by pretty fast, actually, because there's a lot of action and some good plot moments, but this is actually surprisingly pretty action-packed issue.
Yo, Joe!
You got Maverick and Wild Bill in the pilot seats. Maverick says, what, you going to shoot us, Zarana? What? Because what they said, they said, crash, we're going to do something. And Maverick's replying with, you're going to shoot us, a lot of good that'll do you. And it's Zarana and Thrasher and Monkey Wrench. They're in the cockpit with Wild Bill at the stick. Maverick flying co-pilot. Zarana is the only one that really understands their situation. She looks positively frightened. She kind of looks a little bit like Lucy Arnaz here. Wild Bill seems calm, cool, and collected. So does Maverick. He looks a little angry, but he seems pretty cool. And it's Thrasher's hand who's got the gun to Wild Bill's temple, and he blames him for flying into the anti-aircraft. And of course, Wild Bill providing the narrative heavy lifting of, are you forgetting that you hijacked our plane, that you forced us to take off on a short runway, overloaded with your Thunder Machine and a busload of refugees that you've taken as hostages. So this is all Larry's way of catching us up to their predicament. This is what happened last issue, and we didn't spend a lot of time, and he worked it right into a great bit of characterization between, Bill putting responsibility on Thrasher, saying, man, this is all your fault. Don't blame me if we all die. And then the cargo bay, we see, we catch up with Crazy Legs, and we catch up on those hostages, which is a nice touch of storytelling, because he tells us there's hostages and blah blah blah, and that Thunder Machine, and then he shows it to us, and he also puts them in peril as well. So it's really catching us up on where everybody's at. It's pretty well done.
Yo, Joe!
Now the plane's starting to hit the trees. This is when it's starting to come in and starting to take the tops off the trees, losing engine by engine. There goes our left wing. And Thrasher, because he's just incompetent and impotent, is just getting angrier with Wild Bill. And Wild Bill could not be cooler. I love that we never see his eyes. He's just unflappable. And he's like, we're going to crash. All we can hope is, what does he say? A slight reduction in the severity of crashing and burning. It's nice choices on the angle. So there's 4 panels on this page. And the top one, we've got the plane, and it's coming in, kind of coming from the right to the left. Then we go inside, and then because the plane is now going from the left to the right, you see that it's ripping up these trees. It's nice artwork on illustrating. And we also see Monkey Wrench trying to buckle in to his seatbelt too. But that angle shift from the picture, the plane going right to left, then we're inside, now the plane's going left to right. What does that mean? That means that plane went past where we're standing, right? So it's going, it's moving so fast. It's going, it really flips our perspective. So it's like you're doing a head turn, you're going, that plane just went by. It's really nice. And you see to carry that momentum, that's the direction that in this final panel that this little kid gets thrown. So it's our head whips that way to watch the plane go past us. And then that's also it's like that kid goes with the direction of our head. If you can picture what I'm trying to say there, I like this a lot.
Yo, Joe!
And little Miguelito was thrown. Now the plane pops on the ground. This is where there's a lot of just action in this, and just page by page of just the sequence of events, actions, which is well done. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy Ron Wagner's art for this, because it's detailed enough to really carry us through step by step of what this plane crash is about. So now the body of the plane hits the ground, get a big whomp. Everyone else is buckled in, which we saw in the previous panel, except of course for Thrasher, and he goes face first into the instrument panel. Absolutely fabulous. We get Crazy Legs doing some heroic action, saving little Miguelito in the back, and the plane comes to a screeching halt. So Wild Bill saved them all. Thrasher gets his revenge, and then we get to see Crazy Legs in action. The Crazy Legs stuff that's the old narrative trick of always putting an obstacle in your hero's path. Do your best to make it hard for them to accomplish their goal, because it's more interesting that way. They easily could have all been buckled in and just held on for a bumpy landing and we made it. But now you give Crazy Legs a moment to be a hero as well. It's really nice.
Yo, Joe!
The rear gantry pops open, and we see that the Thunder Machine was being held down by straps. Those straps aren't holding any longer, and the Thunder Machine is about to release and crush Crazy Legs and little Miguelito. And as the plane comes skidding to a halt, it does give Crazy Legs time to jump out of the way, yet another obstacle for him. So he first has to save the kid. Now he has to stop getting hit by a car in the back of an airplane. Think about that. He could have died being run over by a car inside the back of an airplane. It's all told really nicely in really simple to understand way with enough background, enough look at the enough motion to make you understand exactly what's happening. Look at the luggage, I guess they're suitcases that are flying against that wall. Because it's not just enough to show that the car would have crushed him. It's showing that everything's getting thrown back there. It's not just the car. There's a bunch of other stuff that's probably flying at him as well. It's really cool.
Yo, Joe!
So now everyone's okay. That the way to show in comics, one of the ways to show like that literally the dust has settled. Like that's the phrase, the dust has settled, is to show dust settling. So in this case, you're showing smoke just kind of lingering in the air, right? So it's not billowing from an active fire. Although there is still fire. Let's not be foolish about that. But it's just there's smoke in the air, right? So we have a moment of respite, and so there's this lingering smoke, and you could see people in canes and people being carried off and helped off. So there's not an urgency to get off the plane, but it is time to go. Crazy Legs has to run to the front. And he's got to check up on his friends. And he gets to the cockpit. Last time we saw Thrasher was getting his face smashed up. Everyone else seemed to be okay. But they do. Larry does just a wonderful job of leaving us on this cliffhanger of Wild Bill looking into the Crazy Legs looking into the cockpit, asking about Wild Bill. And that's it. We're going to cut to the next panel. So even in, spoiler alert, they don't die. There's just let's leave it as a cliffhanger to give us one more thing of excitement to be worried about.
Yo, Joe!
So now we're checking up on Destro. And remember, he donned his Iron Grenadier look last issue, and that was our introduction to him being the true arms dealer of the G.I. Joe universe. He's going to be playing both sides of every battle from here on out. So he's heading back to his kind of generic rocket helicopter. It's not really a branded copter yet. And this is more of that political intrigue carried over from the last issue. You've got the, what's his name? The puppet, it's Chip Goodfellow from the North American Banana Monopoly, which was I believe that's the representation of the CIA. And it's a Villicava? Yeah, General Villicava, who's now in charge of the government of Sierra Gordo. So they're now showing up and they're like, hey, buddy, that ambassador that G.I. Joe got away with, that guy's got secret files that would implicate the CIA, the North American Banana Monopoly, whatever. So we got to go follow them and kill them.
Yo, Joe!
And always the pimp, Destro is like, you've had your free one. Your first hit's free. What are you going to do? And the goon from the Banana Monopoly, he pulls out a suitcase just full of dollar bills, $100 bills, used and non-sequential. So it's an adequate enough down payment, that Destro says. And he says, we'll prep our helicopter and we'll go take care of some business here. He asks them if they want to come along for the ride, and they actually decline because they know that Destro's a maniac, and they're going in, and they weren't happy in that last issue about being in a fight. So, when he calls my company, I feel like it's the stand-in for the CIA, because that's CIA's often referred to as company in these stories. So so basically they just gave Destro money to go kill the Joes.
Yo, Joe!
Helicopter takes off, and the government guy, the Banana Monopoly guy, he thinks it's all right. The Villicava doesn't believe it. So Villicava is like, let's grab our troops and really let's follow him, because he always pays to be careful. So he's actually the smarter of the two. And we see that he also sends a search team to follow the wreckage of the plane because they want to find out what happened to that. I don't think they exactly know exactly who was on that plane, but they're going to investigate it.
Yo, Joe!
Speaking of the Joes that got away, Roadblock, Psych Out, and Hawk, they were last seen at the airfield, and their ride out was supposed to be Wild Bill, but that obviously didn't go the way they wanted to. But they were met with the counter-revolutionaries, and they were like, "You guys come with us, we'll get you out." So we were like, oh, "Okay, they should be okay." They're not really okay because they weren't. It's not like they can just jump on the highway and drive out of town. So they're making their way through the jungle to get back, back to safety, and they're using the old smuggler routes that the counter-revolutionaries used to get in the first place. In fact, they say, what do they say? The old smuggler trails, like we did when you brought us the supplies, which makes Ambassador Winthrop flip his wig, saying to Hawk, "You've been here before. You've been supplying the counter-revolutionaries and advising them under whose directives and how." And Hawk says, "That's for me to know and you to find out. Do all the witch hunting you want after we get you safely back to the States." And the guy's like, "I will do that, Mr. Abernathy. You bet your butt." Like, come on, man. These dudes are about to save you and you're being a jerk. But this is classic G.I. Joe. This is great. This goes back to the first issue when they had to rescue the lady doctor who hated the Joes and hated everything they stood for. That's what they do. They do the job that they do what they're told, and they do what's, best for the moment. And in this case, they don't care that you hate them. They're going to get you out safely. It's great.
Yo, Joe!
Now they come across a house, and the counter-revolutionary leader guy, Jefe, they call him El Jefe, which is like the leader. Shout out to my boy Jeff Collado if you're out there listening, Jeff. We used to call Jeff El Jefe, and actually I think I got it from this comic book actually. El Jefe, man of the people. So they said that this old smuggler named Ernesto, he lives in this house, and that he knows these trails. He'll be able to get the Joes to safety, right? To the border to avoid Villa Cava patrols. This is so great and so smart that immediately one of the Joes, it's either Hawk, it's probably Hawk because he's continuing to talk in in the third panel, sorry. But they notice that all the shutters on this dude's huts are closed, and it's stifling hot. Like, why would all these shutters be closed? And so that tells them it's a trap. They don't even fool around with it. So they go in what's called bounding Overwatch, which we've seen in a million movies where one squad goes in, 10 feet, then the other squad goes in, 10 feet past them, and so on and so forth. And you see that illustrated here in this bottom panel, where this squad of 6, including Roadblock, they're going into the house. Meanwhile, Psych Out and his dudes are hanging out at the tree line. And then once they get settled at the house, Psych Out and those guys are going to go forward. If you've ever I guess the game Overwatch, but if you've ever played the game XCOM, old school XCOM, newer XCOM 2, XCOM what was it, Terror from the Deep? This is the move, guys. This is how you do it. This is how you win XCOM games. You send a guy a little bit, he exposes the bad guys, the other guy comes up, takes those bad guys out, goes a little further, and so on. Just bounding Overwatch. We've been doing this since the late 90s playing XCOM, everybody.
Yo, Joe!
Man, I love XCOM. I used to do G.I. Joe names. I used to name, if you guys have ever played old school, well, any XCOM really, because I know they do it with the new ones. You can rename your soldiers. And that seems very simple these days. But if you think about it, 95 PC games, the ability to customize and rename your soldiers, your bases and everything, that was huge. That was awesome. So I used to have Justice League, huge teams of Justice League XCOM, and like Superman would die, so then the next guy would have to be Superman 2, or he would be Monel, or he could never be another Superman, things like that. Like I used to keep track of who was dead and who wasn't, and I'm positive I did G.I. Joes. In fact, that makes me want to play more XCOM right now and just do an all G.I. Joe game. I need more G.I. Joe video games. That's all I'm saying. So now we get a little silent issue going on in this page. And this is where some of the action heats up. Not a lot of dialogue, not a lot of plot. They're all clustered. Hawks and Lee, they're all clustered around the building. I do question the the wisdom. Shirley questions it too. I do. Hold on. I question the wisdom of having the ambassador in the very first group of dudes busting in on that house. It's pretty funny, but they're hanging out there. They're hanging out in front of that front door, kind of waiting to see what's up. When it turns out that there are soldiers hiding inside of it. He opens the door, probably going to take a leak or something like that, but he opens it and yawns. And as he's doing that, the ambassador kind of flips out and ends up falling over and making a lot of noise, which the guy sees him and looks and is like, what? It's a fun sequence of events. It's very comedic. It's really well paced. The camera's pretty stationary here, and we see background soldiers moving into place. Door opens, guy comes out, nice yawn action. We see Hawk and El Jefe frozen, and this look of surprise on the ambassador's face, and then we get this nice close up of the ambassador flipping out, and then he falls.
Yo, Joe!
Now, how he survived? Oh no, he does get hit. So how he lived. But this soldier screams Yankees, and he just shoots the guy, and he does get shot. And man, Hawk kill cam number 1. Hawk and El Jefe, they just put rounds right through this guy's center mass. It's wild. And then he yells for cover because all the windows fill with guns, and all these soldiers, they start shooting at our guys and our counter-revolutionaries. El Jefe, he gets shot as he's protecting Ambassador Winthrop. Psych Out grabs both those, Psych Out and one of the other soldiers. They grab those guys to pull him to safety, and he asks Roadblock to provide some suppressive cover fire. It's a nice 9-panel grid. I'm always a fan of the 9-panel grid. I don't think it's used enough in modern comics. It should be used more. You can really tell a lot of action in just one page by doing a 9-panel grid, guys. You really can. It's very representational very often. If you pulled out the word balloons from this, it would look like this time-lapse art piece of action. I'm a fan of this page, but I am a fan of the 9-panel grid for sure.
Yo, Joe!
And this is a good-looking Roadblock. I kind of wish we would have got a half-page spread from this, because he's just holding up Ma Deuce, and he lights that house up. That house is... If they thought their smuggler friend was alive in there, that would have been a bad day for BlackRock, because it gets lit up and then they throw a bunch of grenades in there. And it is kind of a smoldering mess, which is, you know what? Hey, you just shot 2 of our guys. It's on.
Yo, Joe!
And we see that it truly was on. The Joes took out every single one of these soldiers. And we see that old Ernesto, their guide, he had been dead for days. They say they took their time with it. So they've been torturing him for days. I feel like they don't really say who he is, but I guess if you're a soldier working for the government and you know that this guide is helping smugglers, right? He's helping people smuggle, helping the counter-revolutionaries smuggle in stuff. It makes sense that they might be, getting up in his grill. So that makes sense. However, they were too late, and this one dead soldier seems to have gotten a radio message out about their location.
Yo, Joe!
And we go right to it. Like, we're not, they don't waste any time. The next page, we see that Villa Cava's troops are already set up around this house, and they know the Joes are inside. And, but they do realize that there is this, there's what they say, 60 yards. Let's see, 50 or 60 meters of wide open space. And they know that there are Joes in there, and Joes are really, really good. So anything, if they go across, they're going to get chewed up. So the soldier on foot is like, nah, man, we're not going in. Villa Cava doesn't care. He tells them, you go. Like, that's a thing. And he and the CAA guy, they're popping champagne. They're celebrating that they're going to nab them some Joes. And they tell Destro, we found them. Like, yeah, maybe you want to get out on this action. I feel like what they're doing is they're gloating to Destro to, like, how often has the Joe's been a thorn in Destro and Cobra's side, right?
Yo, Joe!
And so, here we go. Destro is now making his way in that helicopter. He's making his way towards the action as they send those soldiers charging through that open field. And Psych-Out points out that they must be very brave or extremely stupid. And what I love about this last panel is Psych-Out does not look happy about this. In fact, none of them look happy. Roadblock doesn't look happy. Hawk doesn't look happy. Psych-Out looks sad almost. This close-up of his eyes is really nice. He really looks, because he knows they have to kill all these soldiers that are charging them. That's kind of what has to happen.
Yo, Joe!
And they do kill people. Like, they are going, they're not fooling around. We see the inside of the cabin where Hawk and Psych and Roadblock are, just firing. And we see in the second panel, we see the result of that. It's that first wave of soldiers just getting chewed up. I like the detail Larry puts in here of, he says, first clip, full auto, stake out your field of fire and rake it with sustained grazing fire, which is just really good military details of that first clip. Just go through it to throw as much. In other words, like, don't pick your targets. Just go. You see a lot of people coming, get them to slow down, and you're going to do that by shooting everywhere. And then semi-auto, after they do that, and we see the results in the second panel, semi-auto, pick your targets, aimed fire. So now they've stopped that initial push. Now conserve your ammo and start picking people off one by one. It's it's like military tactics, and it's Larry's fabulous with weaving that stuff into all these G.I. Joe fight scenes, which you guys all know. So now in the final panel of this page, that's what we're seeing, and they don't shy away from this whole issue. They do I'd say great job, but they do a great job of showing us the horrors of what this kind of combat would be. These are we're staring at just dead dudes in G.I. Joe, which we don't normally get, right? The cartoon, you don't normally get a lot of G.I. Joes. Even in a lot of the Cobra battles, you don't see a lot of dead Cobras, right? This is straight up gunfire, killing people. Like, this is a strong issue.
Yo, Joe!
And in comes Destro on that helicopter, that chopper. So now the Villicava soldiers expect that he's there for them. Hawk is a little worried because he sees that they've got those the missiles on the helicopter that could flatten this whole building. It's just a regular hut. It's not really a building, any kind of strong structural building. However, the helicopter spins around and it shoots missiles in the other direction. They do it's a nice use of directive positioning, even though the camera moves here on the page. So the helicopter's moving from right to left towards the hut. The hut in the next panel is still kind of in the left bottom. We see the helicopter swivel, and then the rockets, we don't really see where the rockets are going, but we see that they're going in the opposite direction than the helicopter was previously illustrated as traveling. So it's going back the direction it came from, telling us it's shooting at the other guys, and then we get a whole bunch of explosions and whomps and things like that. So all the bad guys are getting blowed up real good.
Yo, Joe!
And the helicopter lands, and Destro pops his head out, asking, where is El Jefe? Now, he gives El Jefe a deal. He's like, I'm prepared to offer you shipment of sophisticated weapons with payment deferred if you nationalize the holdings of the North American banana monopoly when you take over. So if he gives the CIA a foothold into the government on takeover, he'll help them now. And then they're going to get, Destro and Mars are going to get the contracts later. And so he's agreeing to the deal in front of the ambassador, and he's like, you can't do this. Like, you're trading off pieces of your country to an arms dealer, blah, blah, where's your integrity? And he says, we have as much as we can afford to have, El Jefe says. I believe your country was accepting aid from a tyrannic monarchy during your own revolution. Let's not wave our double standards about in the light of day. And he's flipping out. This is intolerable. And Hawk says, no, this is the way life works. At least Destro will fly you and the Marines to a nice hospital in his helicopter.
Yo, Joe!
Which I always rate as Hawk kind of telling Destro that he's going to do this. Otherwise, the Joes are going to make a stink out of this. Like, guess what? You're going to do this too, Destro. Thanks for saving us. But you got to get these guys out of here too. So now we're elsewhere, and we're back to the crashed ship. And now we see what the result of what Crazy Legs was looking at. Dreadnoks are all okay. Thrasher's not okay. Thrasher's definitely not okay. But everyone else seems to be alive. The seatbelt saved him. Wild Bill's worried about the civilians, which is fabulous. Wild Bill makes sure he grabs a compass before they take off because there's a lot of jet fuel that is going to explode. So they better get away from this airplane. Thrasher still unconscious. In fact, Monkey Wrench says he think he broke his face a little, Zorana.
Yo, Joe!
And as we see that they've all cleared the burning wreckage of the plane, and there's a nice whoomp as the fuel explodes. And there she goes, explodes in the jungle. And now these guys are all they're marooned with a bunch of refugees, 3 Joes, 3 Dreadnoks, and no way out in the jungle. Looks like we're gonna walk out of Sierra Gordo. And Crazy Legs sums it up. We have emergency rations, a little water, and our weapons. We should be able to make it. And Maverick says we've also got a load of refugees and 3 Dreadnoks. This is it's great. It's a great setup. I love that. Yeah, Mary Jane loves it too. I love that we're not relying on ninjas. I love that there's military action, there's political intrigue, there's action. There's the cost of war, like for real, showing those dead soldiers and stuff, and the way Psych Out dealt with that. Like, I really enjoy that sequence of events in this. Really mature stuff. I'm a fan. G.I. Joe number 7 is really good. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And with that, now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.